Good evening. Welcome to September 25th Valley View School Board meeting. I'm going to ask everyone rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Mr. Badouris, if you would, please.
Wait, where's Dad? Did he leave?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is he supposed to do it? Yeah, I don't see him. Okay. Secretary Sikora, board affirmation statement, if you would, please.
Our mission is to empower all learners to be college and career ready and to develop, grow, and achieve as productive citizens.
Thank you. Dr. Mitchum, the agenda, if you would.
Yes, Mr. President, I'd like to ask that the board approve the agenda as presented.
Motion?
Second.
Motion and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. Dr. Mitchum, consent agenda items.
Yes, Mr. Quigley, I'd like to ask that the board approve consent agenda items 5.1 through 5.9. 5.1, board meeting minutes, 9/11/17. 5.2, executive session meeting minutes, 9/11/17. 5.3, student activity contract approval request, John J. Lukanczyk Middle School for Affy Tapple. 5.4, student activity contract approval request for Jonas Salk Elementary and Humphrey Middle Schools with Scholastic Book Fairs. 5.5, student activity contract approval request, Jonas Salk Elementary with Interstate Studio. 5.6, ISBE report of shared services or outsourcing. 5.7, resolution number 1595, approval of tax appeal intervention. 5.8, trips for Romeoville High School. And 5.9, gifts for Jane Addams Middle School.
Motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, seeing none. Roll call vote, please.
Member Perrell?
Yes.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Gilbo?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora?
Yes.
Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Next, Pillars of Valley View. Ms. Sikora, we have Bolingbrook High School, I believe, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Mrs. Zepeda is we share the same fence line. Mrs. Zepeda, we share the same fence line.
So hello, my name is Mike Phillips. I'm one of the assistant directors of student services at Bolingbrook High School. I'm accompanied with Melissa Hester, another assistant director of student services at Bolingbrook High School. To start, we wanted to consider what makes an educator. Many would have you believe it was a combination of pedagogical coursework and field experience that culminates in an official document that declares one's status as a professional educator. To many others, what defines an educator is much more straightforward. It is a drive, a drumbeat from within that propels us to work with kids. It is on a loop. I'm here for the kids. I'm here for the kids. What can I do? What can I do? Tonight, Bolingbrook High School would like to recognize two true educators who have this drive. BHS's Student Services Department has two outstanding paraprofessionals who are very deserving of Pillar of Valley View awards. These two paraprofessionals exemplify the sentiment of first the heart, then the mind. Both staff members have devoted a great deal of personal time and energy to the students they serve. They always have time for students and have inspired a great number of them during their tenure at Bolingbrook High School. What's more, they consistently lead by example and inspire their colleagues to better themselves as well. Our first staff member is Ann Stanford, a supported education instructional aide at BHS. Her love for her job and desire to see all students succeed are commendable and contagious. In previous years, Ann has personally taken students under her wing to see them graduate. She had volunteered lunch hours and every available minute to work one-on-one with students to see they graduated on time. Danielle Leonard, a teacher Ann works with, described her as the best paraprofessional she had ever worked with. This teacher added, "I hope to be as good an educator as she is someday." These sentiments are echoed by a number of Ann's colleagues, and it is with great confidence we recognize her with a Pillar Award. Our second staff member is Josefina Cepeda. Well deserved. Our second staff member is Josefina Cepeda, another supported education instructional aide at BHS. Josefina is a living example of going above and beyond. Whether by assisting students one-on-one, supporting world languages classes, interpreting for families, or just being a supportive colleague, Josefina is constantly on the search for ways to make Bolingbrook High School a better place to learn and work. Upon hearing Josefina was to be recognized with a Pillar of Valley View Award, the outpouring of praise from teachers was endearing and much deserved. Ms. O'Connor, one of the teachers Josefina supports, writes that she takes a vested interest in the students' needs and actively seeks ways to accommodate those needs. Ms. Fletcher Broshek, another of Josefina's teachers, writes that Ms. Cepeda is very conscious of and attentive to the needs of her students. Her knowledge and work ethic, combined with the kindness she shows every day, make her invaluable to our department and our school. Every day, students at Bolingbrook High School are asked to honor the Raider. Ann and Josefina take this encouragement to heart as well. These Raiders have been and will continue to be an example for all at Bolingbrook High School. We want to extend a very sincere thank you to the community, the school board, Superintendent Mitchum, and members of senior leadership for allowing us the honor of recognizing these incredible staff members. Thank you.
I can't remember.
Next up, Bolingbrook High School AP Scholars. AP Scholars that we're recognizing tonight, Mr. Brass is going to tell us 3 classes with 3 or greater on the
That's right.
exam.
All of that great information, correct. This evening, my name is Dr. Albert Brass, Jr., and I'm assistant principal here at Bolingbrook High School, student services and building operation. I have the distinct honor and privilege this evening to represent or actually acknowledge our 2016 and 2017 AP Scholars this year. On the behalf of our administration led by our principal, Dr. Jason Pascavage, my fellow administrators who are present, our staff, and our students, we are very excited this evening to acknowledge the accomplishments of our 92 recipients of this outstanding award. Now, you're looking behind me saying, where are 92 students? But tonight we have 9 of our students, and the majority of our students are our seniors from last year who have graduated and went on to college. Our current juniors who are not in attendance are also involved in after-school activities. These students behind me represent the few that were able to make it this evening. In addition, I want to talk more about our last year, our focus at BHS. At BHS, our goal was to increase the number of students last year who actually took the AP exam in May. So our initiative was to ensure that those students had every reasonable monetary values available for them. So we were able to work with the state of Illinois, who helped our students who qualified, as well as the DuPage Township, who also gave us some money to support those kids. So we are pleased to say to you that last year we had 473 students take at least one exam. The previous year we had 333, so we had a huge gain. In addition to that, we offered 849 exams were taken by students last year, and compared to the previous year, 562, another dramatic increase. We owe a lot of this to the state, as I mentioned before, and the money that they've offered us to help our students. In addition, this year now, we actually offered AP Human Geography. President Quigley, if you recall, you happened to overhear that conversation we had last year at AP Parent Night. A lot of our freshman students now have the possibility of earning college credit because now they take the AP Human Geography class. Lastly, before I bring the students up, I want to tell you about the AP scores. AP is based on the range of 1 to 5, 5 being the highest. The student behind me this evening has scored at least a score of 3 or higher. In order to receive college credits, most colleges will accept at least a 2 or 3 higher. So this is an awesome accomplishment for parents. It's going to help save money going toward college. And I see some of you nodding your heads already, so that's our intent, to offer this for our students. Next, I want to give you the numbers. As I mentioned, we had 92 scholars total. Out of that 92 scholars, we had 63 AP scholars. Behind me, I have our AP scholars. Those are students who have at least received a score of 3 or higher on at least 3 or more AP exams. So at this time, I'm going to bring them to the stage. Ali Ala Musawi. Hector Barara. Trevion Brawley. Jared Canty. Kylie Clapsaddle. Rymil Delagan. Maximilian Kaufman. Alyssa Millar. That concludes our students and board, and Dr. Mitchum and the executive board want to thank you for your support with our AP program.
And now Romeoville with their AP. Let's go. Good job, Brad. Dr. Kinder, Mr. Kinder, I'm sorry.
Mr. Kinder. All right. Good evening, President Quigley, members of the board, Dr. Mitchum, senior leadership, members of the community, and awesome student section, members of the audience. Thank you for being here tonight. This is our homecoming week, and this is one of the events that they chose to honor some of our students, some of their fellow scholars that at RHS. And then right after this, 8 o'clock, we got the bonfire over at RHS, just to the south side of the pool and south side of campus. So you're all invited over there for some hot chocolate, marshmallows, music, and fun Spartan stuff. Right? All right. We'll see you over there, guys.
Too hot for hot chocolate.
But to not to double back on all of the stuff that Dr. Brass shared about Bolingbrook, first of all, congratulations to the Bolingbrook High School students. Awesome job, BHS. Definitely like to share in the sentiment of our gains as well in terms of the number of kids tested. We had over 232 different students take tests last year, and taking 532 tests, over almost about 125 more tests than the year previous, in which we were able to gain 60 students being AP scholars this year. 40 of those students were AP scholars, 10 of which were AP scholars with honor, and then we had 10 also students AP scholars with distinction. We have 9 of those students that are here with us, 13 that are still on campus, and a lot of them are still working and doing other things, but I'd like to recognize the wonderful students that we have with us. First, the AP scholars. The first student is Benedict Austriaco. Next, we have Riley Boyette.
Good job, man. Good. Keep it up.
Jacob Brooker. Nicole Falley. Elizabeth Hermosello. Ashley Pitt.
Good job. Keep it up.
Sori Yilla.
Good job. Keep it up. Keep it up. Keep it up.
And our last is one of the 10 that we had last year is our AP scholar with honor, and that's Daniel Spatz.
So you guys don't have to stay, you know that, because you got to go home and study, right?
They have a bonfire.
Oh, you got a bonfire. So start 8 bonfire. Thank you all. Congratulations. As they're exiting the building, for those of you who are watching on TV, the value of these classes cannot be underscored. I have a son who is on this list. He's a freshman in college. He has more credits, almost enough credits to skip an entire semester of school, which makes me very happy because it saves me a lot of money. So the value, again, cannot be underscored. If your students sign up for these classes, it's a lot of work. We're not going to lie to you. The teachers won't lie to you. They're going to tell you right, you're going to go to your counselors. They're going to explain. You're going to put in a lot of effort. But the value is there. And now that we're offering it as a freshman opportunity as well, I have a son who's a freshman at Bolingbrook High School. He's engaged in that class, and he said, "Dad, this is a lot of work." Well, you knew going in, but we hope that more students take advantage of these. And if you look down this list, they didn't really talk about a handful of these students that we have AP scholars with distinction. And let me explain what that says. Granted to students who receive an average score of at least 3.5 out of 5 on all AP exams taken and scores of 3 or higher on 5 or more of the exams. Those are kids who are challenging themselves, and they should be congratulated, commended, as should all of them, but those kids in particular are really putting in the extra work. So congratulations to them, and the list is out there. But let's move down the agenda. Liaison reports from my right, if you would.
I went to Wilco. They had an open house on one day last week. I urge people that have children that are debating what they want to do. They have some great programs over there, and they do have college classes for those students also.
Liaison reports from my left.
I've mentioned this at previous board meetings, but this coming Thursday is the District Safe School Conference. So we have a lot of people from out of town coming to that.
Any others? I'm going to read real briefly. I'll give you a legislative report. I have a note from Senator Pat McGuire, and on it is attached a memorandum from the governor's office, and the memorandum from the governor states, the governor signed House Bill 2993. The letter from the senator says, "Dear Steve, HB 2993 allows schools to serve students' produce grown by students in schools or community gardens." So they passed a piece of legislation to allow the kids who grow food at school through projects and what have you to actually serve that produce to schools. I think it's a great idea. He said, "My chief Senate sponsorship of this bill came about because of Megan Gibbons, Tracy Suter, and Anna Wilson, who told me about HB 23 while showing me Tibbitt's student produce garden. The senator thought that was a good idea and that maybe he should move forward with piece of legislation to allow that to occur. Apparently that there were some regulations and rules against that, and I think the senator, and I want to thank those who were proactive in approach to making this happen. So there are school districts throughout the state who have these gardens, and now the kids can actually eat the food that they've grown if they so choose. I think it's a fantastic idea. Kids need to know where things come from. Whether you like what you're growing or not, you know, agriculture is the #1 commodity in the maybe in the United States, but certainly in the state of Illinois. So anyway, he goes on to say, I hope you are pleased to know that the beneficial new state law, when enacted by the governor, is largely due to the hospitality and the advocacy of your staff and your members. Sincerely, Senator Pat McGuire. So thank you, Senator, for sending this letter. Appreciate it. I'd like to share that with people. Moving down the agenda, audience participation. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to approach the board this evening? Are you coming to say something? You forgot your book bag. Got it. Okay. Action reports. Dr. Mitchum.
No action reports tonight, sir.
School calendar report. This is the one that everybody gets excited about. Ms. Kinder?
Oh, absolutely. Action report 10.1, we are seeking your approval on the 2018-2019 school calendar. This draft was presented at the August 11th board meeting, and after that time it was posted online for any community feedback, and we did receive about 10 comments on the calendar. The calendar that we are presenting is subject to change dependent on collective bargaining language and or state mandates. I do want to note that we are waiting on a assessment date for the SAT for our high school juniors, and so hopefully that works well with our calendar, and if not, we would have to take another look and bring that board back to the board for consideration. So the draft calendar, or the proposed calendar, is posted for your review, and we are seeking your approval this evening.
Second.
Question, what were some of those comments? You said you got non-response. What were some of those questions that came forth?
We've gotten comments similar in the past, and oftentimes for every one comment, there is a counter comment that kind of balances it out. So a common theme, there was a few comments related to the school year starting too early. That is one theme, and that came from, I think, about 2 or 3 respondents. Another was about the placement of spring break. They believed it was too late in April. And so we've gotten other comments in the past and feedback from the committee regarding that as well. And so some school districts do have it later in March. Other school districts keep it attached to the Easter holiday, but that moves on the calendar, so that's not always predictable. So the calendar committee did decide to keep it consistent and offer it in the second week in April. And then we had to come and reconsider that decision based on the state SAT exam. So it was primarily related to spring break, the start of the school year, and or matching our calendar to surrounding districts, because we know that, staff members, oftentimes that's a consideration for childcare and everything of that nature. But it's difficult to meet every need when you're creating a calendar for a large community like ours. Mm-hmm.
Just out of curiosity, years ago when I was on the board, we moved to finishing finals in the high schools before break. It used to be done after break.
Right.
Has anybody ever crunched numbers to see what the benefit to that is as grades go? I mean, did you have any? I'm just kind of curious. It's just something that popped in my head here.
Not specifically looking at grades themselves. However, what we do look at is then how students are able to perform as a result of,
right.
being in those classes.
Yeah, maybe
and
not grades, but yeah.
Yeah, and that is an area where we continue to see progress. So it's not negatively impacted our students, and we also look at the length of time of the semesters for instructional time. We have high school teachers on the committee, and so they definitely give us the feedback. The preference has been to have final exams before break.
Right. Oh,
then the other consideration is ending the school year, and we never used to end before Memorial Day, and that has since become a favored option by staff, and I do believe by a great number of families. instead of having to come back for a few days after the Memorial Day. So we do try to balance the semesters as much as possible, and we have not seen a negative implication on learning.
I just know that it seems like the students are happier getting it over with and they can enjoy their Christmas break and what have you, so.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you. So we have a motion, we have a second.
Hang on a second, I just have something. The early release days, I noticed that there was a comment on that. Somebody had suggested maybe having it on Fridays. Is there a problem? Would that be a problem with bus transportation or anything?
I don't know that bus transportation would necessarily be the issue. When we initially launched early release days, it was a preference by the staff to not have it on a Fridays. For example, at elementary, they stay much later, I believe 4:30 till 4:30 on early release days, and so I think the widespread opinion at that time was to have it during the week. They also felt it would be more productive than having it on a Friday afternoon. And then once we decided on Wednesdays at high school, that went down to middle, and then we continued with the trend with elementary. And we understand that consistency is most important for families rather than switching it, just so they can make childcare arrangements and just know that it is, happens midweek as opposed to on a Friday afternoon.
Motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Member Badouris?
Yes.
Member Campbell?
Yes.
Member Gilbo?
Yes.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Secretary Sikora? Yes. Vice President Zach?
Yes.
President Quigley?
Yes. Budget. Make a motion that we adjourn general session and go into special session? Go to a public hearing, I'm sorry, for the purposes of adopting the 2017-2018 Valley View School Board budget. Do I have a motion?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. We are now in a budget hearing, which will be led by Mr. Gazafi, our Chief Financial Officer. Gary, if you would walk us through this.
Before we begin with the presentation, I'd just like to let the board know that public notice was published on August 17th in both the Romeoville and Bolingbrook editions of the Bugle newspaper, advertising that tonight's public hearing would be held tonight. And so we met that requirement, also having the budget on display for a minimum of 30 days. Our overall budget, $286 million. It's an increase of 2.6% over prior year's actuals. Important to note that that excludes a $60.5 million TRS on behalf payment. For those of you not familiar with that, that's a book entry only that's required to be carried in the budget. We don't receive the money. We don't write a check for the money or make any sort of transfer. This is the required contribution that the state makes on behalf of all TRS annuitants related to the Valley View School District. You can imagine that if we had that $60 million, our budget looks almost $346 million. Operational funds, which would exclude our debt service payment, those funds that are used to pay bonds, as well as our life safety funds, $241 million, or an increase of $9.5 million, or 4.1% from last year's budget. The changes for this year's budget in the area of revenue, corporate personal property replacement tax. This tax is projected to decrease based on the estimate from the Illinois Department of Revenue to the tune of $2.4 million, or over 23.4%. Primarily due to a public act that I think no one was really kind of had their eye on, Public Act 100.0021, authorizing almost $300 million in expenditures out of the PPRT fund for FY18. And so the concern I have with that, obviously, is that in bullet point 2, general state aid estimate, we're slated to increase $1.6 million due to the new funding formula. And so they're giving us 1.6 in one hand and taking 2.4 out of the other. We're probably one of the top 5 recipients of corporate personal property replacement taxes in the state, and I don't think anybody saw this coming. I'm hoping it's not a trend. I hope they don't continue to raid the corporate personal property replacement tax, and obviously it's a big impact to us. The largest other component of revenue, property tax levy increase of $2.9 million, 50% of which would be applied to this fiscal year. And it is limited by the tax cap legislation to 2.1% of the prior year's extension, which represents the consumer price index for 2016. On the expenditure side, we're increasing salary costs by 3.6% per our labor agreements and the increase of instructional tech coach positions, as well as the expanded staff for the Early Childhood Center and associated drivers, bus drivers, and monitors with the expected enrollment increase at early childhood. Benefits are budgeted for an increase of 4.5% in claims costs and fixed costs. That could be a little low. We're basing that on a 3-year trend in our claims, but I will tell you that this past year was a bad year for us in terms of healthcare costs. Outside placement tuition had a budgeted increase of $410,000, $2.4 million increase in our scheduled debt service payment, addition of $75,000 to replace driver's ed vehicles, addition of $68,000 for 3/4 of the cost of crossing guards in the village of Bolingbrook, as well as our continuation of our one-to-one technology initiative, as well as the new student information system for the coming school year. All of those expenditures have been incorporated into this year's budget. Revisions since the budget was put on display back in early August. We did reduce the amount of mandated categorical funding that entails transportation and special education, due to be received by $3.3 million because we did receive the distribution before August 31st, which allowed us to book it in the prior year, which is where it belonged. We talked about corporate personal property. Fortunately, when we built the early budget, we built it with the last year's budget allocation and not the actual. So the actual reduction from budget to revised budget is only $448,000 rather than $2.5 million. So again, a little bit of solace in that. We added the $303,000 of solar renewable energy credits, or SRECs, to be received by the Illinois Power Agency from our installation of the solar panels at 5 of our schools. Those were energized mid-July, and it looks right now that they are exceeding our expectations. We'll have a future report for you in that. And we did reduce budget for contracted speech by $200,000 due to our review of needed staffing. I think it's important to note for you that when we build these budgets, some of these budget submittals come to us as early as May and June. We circle back with the affected departments, and this was one area where we felt like a reduction could be implemented into the budget in reviewing our special needs costs. Source of revenue, just to give you a general sense of where the majority of our funding comes from. You see at the middle there, we've got 58% local, 36% state, and 6% federal. But that incorporates that $60 million I talked about as the on-behalf payment. If we took that out, at the bottom of the page, you'll see 71% is locally funded, 22% comes from the state, and 7% from federal. And I just kind of give you a next slide of a 5-year average. You can see that the state has been slowly chipping away and increasing their percentage cost of funding. 5-year average is just a hair over 20%. The bulk of our funding comes locally, and that would be property taxes, user fees, the corporate personal property replacement tax will also be included in that. And the federal really doesn't waver much, between 6 and 7%. Questions on anything so far?
Gary, real quick, on the 5-year average page, will the new state budgeting change that?
I would think it would, just because they're really trying to drive those districts that are below the 100% adequacy target. We are at 66% adequacy in the state's eyes, and ideally we would move toward that 100%, but I'm sure there's many other districts, primarily rural downstate districts, that are below 66%. So the bulk of any new dollars and revised dollars will be going that way. Mm-hmm. But so I would think with that 1.6 additional, and more importantly, I think the reduction of the proration that we've been subject to over these last 5 or 6 years will go a long way to bring that percentage up.
Okay, good. So maybe in 2 years or a year and a half, we look at that number and it...
I'd like to see it at 25 or 30, to be honest. I mean, yeah. Provide some relief for our citizens and our taxpayers, our businesses.
Well, that's what I was getting at. Yeah. You know, and constitutionally, we're still below what I consider the constitutional mandate of the state of Illinois to provide a preponderance of educational funds at 58 or 71%, however you want to look at it, that puts them at 36 or 22. They're still not even close. But the funding formula, I think, is better than anything we've had in the past, certainly. So I guess we'll take a look at this next year and see what, where we are then, and then see what it really means when all the wheat is separated from the chaff, as they say.
I think that's an important comment, because even as we sit here now, I do not know definitively what our funding collections will be from the state for this new school year. The early models were just that. They were early models. With everything that gets thrown in last minute in those bills, those budget bills, you really need to see what the final outcome is going to be. I feel fairly confident that what we saw early on will become the norm. But again, until you see the final printouts, if you will, you just don't know.
Gary,
Yes.
I'm sorry, where are we at with the hospital payback?
December was our last payment. Is it this December? Last December. So we are through with that repayment
Yay.
schedule. Yeah.
Okay, so we're done.
And that was about a $1.2 million, $1.27 million repayment plan that we were on for 4 years.
And is it going back to court also?
There was some talk about it becoming another court case to see if it would be reversed.
Yeah.
I have not heard any update. John, I don't know if you have any.
Yeah, they're still kicking it around.
The general state aid history slide just gives you an idea of where we've been over the last 10 years and the changes. The figures you see in the amount column are the final figures, and you can see that we were subject to almost 5 years of proration. I didn't include the slide that I had last year, but I did have a slide indicating what the proration amounts were, and between general state aid and transportation, we were withheld, if you will, almost $21 million. And with the question that Mr. Cora just asked with the hospital, that was another, I think that all in between the withholding and the 4-year payment, I mean, that was another $10 million. So, I mean, we had $30 million of lost revenue that we're really putting a pinch, if you will, on operations. And so for 2016-17, you'll see a $35.7 million collection amount. It was actually a tad higher than that, but those were due to some adjustments that won't carry forward. And so you can see that in the difference column at the very bottom, $1.6 million, that's what we anticipate the additional funding to be coming out of the evidence-based model funding reform that President Quigley mentioned. This is just a kind of a historical corporate personal property replacement tax, and you can see how it kind of fluctuates over the years. You're down $1.8 million, you're up $2 million, down $800,000, up $200,000, up $100,000, up $700,000, down $800,000. And so it's really difficult to try to project what it's going to be year to year. You're at the mercy of the Department of Revenue to provide you an estimate. Last year's estimate was 8.4. We actually collected close to 10.4, which obviously is a pleasant surprise, but at the same time, when you receive your estimate for this year at 7.9, it's a pretty steep decline year over year. Our overall budget, all funds, $286 million, broken out by those respective objects. Salaries are 52% of our budget. Factor in benefits, you're at 66%, or 2/3 of our budget. Purchase services are close to 10, supplies 4.8, capital outlay, other objects, which is our debt service payment there, 43 million, 31 of which I think is the debt service, and the other portion it would be our lease payments and so forth. The ed fund, which is our largest fund, is below, and you can see there that if you look at just the education fund, we're at 83% salary and benefits for associated staff charged to the ed fund. Purchase services, a little less, 7%, supplies at 3.9, and the remainder in the various objects there. Overall, we've got a 2.6% increase, as I mentioned in the first slide, in our overall budget, 6% in the ed fund, primarily due to the new staff associated with early childhood and their associated benefits. Probably the most important slide in the deck is our projected revenues, expenditures, and ending balances projected out to June 30, the end of our fiscal year. And so we start the year with just under $63 million. That's on the far right-hand side there. We're projecting $240 million in collections. Again, these are just our main operational funds, the 6 funds listed there, with expenses of just over $241 million, leaving us about $500,000 short in our revenue over expenses. As I've done every year since I've been here, this budget is a worst-case scenario budget. We don't anticipate spending every line item in our budget to zero, and we feel that that $500,000 can easily be covered, if you will, and we would certainly anticipate, barring any catastrophic meltdown with the state, that we would end the year in the black. And so our magic number, as we like to focus, when I presented the budget in early August, we had 92 days, and with the collection of that third categorical and the few budget revisions that we had, we picked up 2 extra days, so we're at 94 days of operational reserves. And as you know, we like to just stay at 90 or better.
For those of you who don't maybe understand what he's saying is operational funds on hand. I think since I've been on the board a couple of times, we voted to drop that below 90 days. It makes Gary very itchy because at 61 days, that's just 2 months of operational funding, right? And if we...
And the way we're funded, Steve, I mean, as you know, we get paid primarily 2 times a year, June and September, when people pay their taxes. And relying on the state for any sort of reliable, consistent cash flow or funding has been just not absent for the last 3 or 4 years. And so we try to say, in September we get our last paycheck. Do we have enough money to go around in April, May before we get paid again in June? And so, those are the things that Joanne and I, primarily Joanne, focuses on with cash flow to make sure that we can pay our staff, pay our vendors, and pay our obligations to the banks for any outstanding bonds that we might have. And so 90 days kind of gives us that cushion, if you will, to weather those shortfalls.
There are other districts who are in far worse shape than us. There are districts at the end of the school year have to borrow money to pay their payroll. We are fortunate that we have been lucky that we are in the communities that we have, with the growth that we have. I would like to say that the people up here are good stewards of the taxpayers' money as well. We're always conscious that this is the taxpayers' money we're spending. We've tried to never impact the classrooms when we make cuts and so on and so forth. We're trying to lead this district in a positive fashion without impacting classrooms, with getting better results, being stewards of the people's tax money, businesses, individuals, families, residents, so on and so forth. Other districts have not been so fortunate with that, and I think Gary, Jim, even some of your predecessors should be commended for where we are today and where we as a board like to keep this. And so I just want to say thanks for that, because there are other districts who are in far worse shape than we are at the end of the year. Trust me. So are you done, or do you have any more?
I've got one more slide, just a 5-year fund balance history. To me, this is an important slide for you as board members to know that, where have we been? What does it look like in a quick snapshot? The last thing you want to be told by your CFO or anybody is, we're out of money, or the checkbook balance is below what we need. And so I always like to present, I think I gave you a 10-year in the packet, but just for presenting it this evening, I chopped it into 5, but it's important to know, where we stand with these primary operational funds in terms of being able to support the organization.
At this time, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who would wish to address the board with regard to this budget? Are there any members who have any questions? If not, hearing none, seeing none, a motion to approve the 2017-20... Oh, wait.
Oh, got to go out of public hearing.
Oh, we got to close public hearing. Then we... Okay, sorry about that. We only do this once a year. Motion to adjourn public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call vote or voice vote? Roll call vote, please.
Member Perro?
Yes.
Member Gilbo?
Yes.
Member Campbell,
Yes.
Member Badouris,
Yes.
Secretary Sikora, Vice President Zach,
Yes.
President Quigley.
At this
Now,
time, I
we
would
need a
recommend.
motion to approve the
Yep.
2017.
Approve Resolution 1597, adopting the budget for fiscal year 17-18.
We need a motion to approve the budget.
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, hearing none, roll call vote, please.
Member Gilbo,
Yes.
Member Perro,
Yes.
Member Badouris,
Yes.
Member Campbell,
Yes.
Secretary Sikora,
Yes.
Vice President Zach,
Yes.
President Quigley.
Yes. That being done, make a real quick comment. I know one thing, everybody up here takes, this is probably, 1A. You're entrusting us with your students' education. One, those of you who don't have children in school are entrusting you with your tax dollars. We take this very serious, and the reviews are done, and I think we do a very good job of it. And I think, like I said, Gary and your staff, Dr. Mitchum, your overview of all this, I think people should be commended. And again, we're in a much better state than other districts, but this is one of the things, it's the most important thing that school district does, is approve a budget. It is part and parcel of when you get sworn in to this position that you will be good stewards of the taxpayers' money. And trust me, we're very conscious of the fact that 65% or however, depending on what math you want to use, of your tax dollars is going to our school district. So we thank you for, putting your faith in us, and trust me, we take it very serious. Next, moving down the agenda.
Yes, sir. Information report 13.2. I was so
12.1.
excited to share about the
I'm
academic
sorry.
progress.
Sharon?
Thank you, President Quigley. Action Report 12.1, I'll be quick. Consolidated Action Report for Certified and Classified Personnel. We're seeking approval on 17 items for certified personnel, 36 for classified, and 1 for classified administrative personnel.
Need a motion?
So moved.
Motion and seconded. Is there any questions or discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Member Campbell,
Yes.
Member Badouris,
Yes.
Member Perro,
Yes.
Member Gilbo,
Yes.
Secretary Sikora,
Yes.
Vice President Zach,
Yes.
President Quigley.
Yes. She's all excited to give her good news report. So are we doing the Trans World System contract renewal update? See, what would you rather hear, a student progress update or the Trans World System contract renewal? I'm just going on.
I will be brief. It's pretty self-explanatory. We're we're just presenting for information this evening the renewal of our Transworld contract to aid in our receivable collections. We've been using them for many years. From a cost perspective, they've not increased the cost, I think, over the last 3 renewals. And so you've got some information there. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. But we will be seeking approval in our next Board of Education meeting.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Kinder, if you would please give us the academic progress update.
Thank you. So information report 13.2 is our academic progress update, and I think I was just so excited because I was thinking of all the nuts and bolts that go into a district budget to make a district of our size run. It's just appropriate placement that you get to see the progress that we continue to make. And we see the progress that our students are experiencing every day due to the hard work of our educators, of our leaders, and we see that in many ways that are not measurable. We observe it, we see it, we feel it, and we also hear it from our learners, and those are the exciting things. And then we also look at the quantitative measures, and we look at our local assessments, and we're committed to being data-driven. So what you're going to see tonight is just a glimpse of that outcome, one measure of progress, and it's how the state views our progress. It's our state assessment, and it's not only the state assessment, but it's the accountability measure that the state uses. So tonight, we are going to take a look at our PARC results for 2017. PARC is the Partnership of Assessment for Readiness for College and Career Readiness, and it's the assessment given for our students in grades 3 through 8. And also SAT, which is given to our 11th graders. And so we have our preliminary results, and we are going to share that with you this evening. Adam Herder, who is our Executive Director of Pre-K 5, along with Karen Flores, who's our Executive Director of 612, will give you a glimpse at our results and the progress that we're making. We will take a look at two perspectives on our progress, and the first is a grade level comparison to 2016. So this will show how our grade level scores compared to last year within our school district, and then we'll also look at student cohort growth comparison to the state. And this is the important story within the data. It tells how our students are continuing to grow and progress as they move from grade to grade throughout their time with us in Valley View. Okay, so beginning with perspective one.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me? And I usually don't have a problem with volume. There we go. The first perspective that we're sharing with you, as Rachel just mentioned, are students who were in third grade last year or in 2016, and then the students that were in third grade, and then so forth moving forward. So this is one perspective that the data provides for us. And we definitely look at this perspective, but the perspective that we really want to focus in on is how did our third graders do in 2016, and then how did they do in fourth graders in 2017. So what you have here are non-like comparisons of, these are different students when we look at 2016 and 2017. So you can see that there is a lot of positive that is taking place just in terms of how kids are performing within our system. We do have some opportunities for improvement, not just where there are non-green shaded colors, but even where some of the increases are lower numbers. It's definitely something that we celebrate. However, in mathematics, specifically at the middle school level, we're always really trying to look at resources that will help our math teachers diagnose the needs or the deficits of our students better. Or more effectively. Oftentimes what we'll hear at the middle or secondary level is that oftentimes it's very basic math skills that are impeding a student's progress from being able to enter into something a little bit more complex, which they encounter in those middle or secondary grades. So overall, it's something that is definitely celebratory because we have so many pockets of where we're exceeding in the growth that we've made just from one year to the next. And then we also very much recognize some of the opportunity and the resources and the support and development that we have to continue to provide our teachers so that they can in turn impact the growth and achievement of our kids.
And so this is our second perspective at how we like to look at the growth. And as Karen mentioned, this is what we focus heavily on. This would be called cohort growth. So it's the same students measured against the same students year to year. So for example, the students who were third graders 2 years ago and were fourth graders last year, how did they perform in third grade? And then how many more students were showing gains as fourth graders? And then of course, fourth to fifth, fifth to sixth, sixth to seventh, and seventh to eighth. You can see the two columns, the middle one being math, the far right being English and language arts. There's a tremendous amount of celebration clearly apparent on this slide in both subject areas and at all levels. The one area that is shaded in the pink where there was a decline for a group of students was from third to fourth grade in math. And that is something that we have seen annually. It's also in every state except for Maryland that takes the PARCC assessment. That is just a standard trend from third to fourth grade. The good news for us is that while this is a decline, it actually reflects an improvement over the first to second year on PARCC, where as a district we declined nearly 15 percentage points. And so while that number is simply not acceptable, there is a lot of work being done curricularly to investigate what it is, number one, that Maryland is doing, oddly enough, to be the outlier there, but also a heavy focus in fourth grade training for our teachers surrounding math. This slide is the same information, except it compares it to the state change. So again, you can see third to fourth grade, that column where it says VVSD for math and for ELA, and then the other cohort grade changes. It shows our change in green, or the one that's in pink, compared to the state. And so in all 9, except for that third to fourth grade example in math, all other 9, there was higher growth than the state for the same cohort of students year to year. And in some cases, dramatically higher growth compared to the state. To further the point about the 3rd to 4th grade math example, this is a spot of good news. While it is the only pink area that we have celebrated and believe we can build off of. Last year, the way this looked, so for 2 years ago, Park, it would have been, the district went down 14 points and the state went down 4 points. So we were 10 points behind the state in terms of that traditional decline. This year, we're less than 1 point behind the state in terms of that traditional decline. And we anticipate with the work that's being done that we'll just continue to move in that positive trending direction. And so we talk about continuous improvement as a district at all levels. We talk about it with students in setting goals for themselves and their learning. We talk about it for buildings in terms of improving their outcomes and the learning of their students. And of course, at a district level, we consider our highest priority constant continuous improvement and monitoring our impact. And this slide essentially is a summary of the data we've looked at, but it shows how many different grade levels have improved year over year in the different subject areas. Specifically to point out, in English language arts, 2 grade levels in 7th and 8th, not only did they grow at higher rates than the state, the achievement rate of the percentage of students who were proficient or above on the exam was also higher than the state. And similarly in math, in grades 3 and 7, our achievement level is higher than the state's achievement level, as well as our growth rate.
So the other little bit of information that we would like to share, in addition to our 3 through 8 students taking Park, we also have the SAT or the SAT Suite, which is a suite of assessments that we can begin administering at 8th grade, 9th, 10th, and then having the actual SAT getting taken as an 11th grader. There are very strong similarities to the ACT. The SAT even did a redesign which made it more comparable to ACT. Last year was the very first year that we administered it, so we do have some baseline data that we're going to share with you, and then it's something that we will continue to build off of as we get more baseline data, and then look at some of our internal data points throughout the school year to try and keep a pulse on where we're at our fall administration and where we want to end up in terms of spring administration. This is just a little bit more information. SAT does have 2 benchmarks, very similar to Park. We look at evidence-based reading and writing, and then we'll also look at math. The second bullet just simply captures how they establish benchmarks, and so oftentimes when we talk about Park, you'll hear different levels, where when we talk about SAT, you're looking at a different type of score. The correlation between students who are able to meet the benchmark score in math or evidence-based reading and writing, it's liking them to be able to be successful with the 75% or higher in any post-secondary coursework. And so this slide captures where we have performed as a district with our first administration last year. In evidence-based reading and writing, we were 2% behind where the state fell, and in math, we were 4% behind where the state fell as well. We have a lot of opportunity that we've already been exploring and analyzing within what the assessments hold our kids accountable to, and we've been doing data analysis activities with our high schools, and then they've also been looking at the data internally themselves. This is something that as we continue to progress throughout the years, and as we also have data points, as I mentioned earlier, from the PSAT suite. So the SAT is that 4th part of the suite, but we'll also have data points for our 8th graders, our 9th graders, and our 10th graders that then allow us to keep a pulse on where performance is at so that we can impact these numbers and make the green bars definitely go higher.
So just a quick summary in terms of our actions, in terms of continuing to see the growth that we saw in last year's results. In elementary school, we're focused heavily on raising the rigor of learning, meaning the depth and complexity at which students learn. We now have the Eureka Math program that we have talked with this board about in the past, in place in all 6th grade levels in elementary school, K through 5, and that being a really rigorous core curriculum for us. We also are looking at the Achieve 3000 reading program, which is responsible, in addition to many other significant improvements at the middle school level. It is a piece of the dramatic increases in scores at the middle school level, and one that we are going to apply in our 4th and 5th grade as well, and anticipate seeing similar results. We also have a focus on responsive learning environments to teach students the social emotional skills that are necessary to be successful as elementary school students. Thirdly, we are focused heavily with our staff on professional collaboration. So the days of where a teacher used to plan alone in their classroom, essentially without much collaboration with their peers, are over. And that our staff deserves a lot of credit for making that transition, and we believe that it will have a dramatic impact going forward. And then finally, as we've talked about at these meetings as well, we now have Chromebooks in kindergarten through 5th grade. The ratio in kindergarten through 3rd grade is about 0.67 Chromebooks to a student, which means for over 2/3 of the instructional minutes a day, our kindergarten through 3rd grade students have access to that device. And then in 4th and 5th grade, we're at a full 1-to-1 ratio, which allows those students to access rigorous programs like Achieve 3000 and other electronic curriculums.
At the middle school level, there hasn't been much that has changed. If anything, we're just strengthening what we have been focusing on. What's really powerful about Achieve 3000, and I'm super excited to see the impact that it's going to have on our elementary friends, is that Rachel Schlechter has done a lot of data analysis, and what we have discovered is that students who reach the career and college readiness level on Achieve, it's almost a 100% correlation to students then who will achieve a 4 or a 5 on Park. So what that gives us is a very strong internal data point to be able to know where our student performance is at, so that when the high stakes assessment does come around the corner in the spring, we have a much better understanding of where we're going to perform before we even get the results from the state. Some of the other components that are still present in middle school classrooms, Mathia X, great books, the 1-to-1, obviously we've evolved that now. All middle and high school students all have their own 1-to-1 device, which is just phenomenal in terms of the efficiency that teachers can use for instruction, and then the immediacy of the feedback that we're able to provide for our students as well. And then Lucy Calkins is a writing program that we use. There is opportunity within that. It's quite comprehensive, and it needs a little bit of brevity, but it's still something that has definitely been moving the writing skills and even the reading skills forward for our middle school students. High school, we have a very, very initial data point with SAT, so we're excited to kind of continue to dig into that, look at how we can make correlations from how our middle school and our elementary students are performing on Park, and then how we can use that data to drive forward what we're doing with the SAT suite as well. And then what's really exciting, I shared this with Adam and Rachel, is that when we don't have to change too much on a slide, when we give this Park update to you, and it's not because we're trying to stay stale at all, but it's because we're maintaining a course that is steady, it is right, it is impacting the performance of our students. And so what you see up there, visible learning, while we don't necessarily use that language all of the time, the research behind what visible learning has discovered is definitely a compass for us here in Valley View. To the right, you'll see a Common Formative Assessment 2.0. That's a copy of the text. We've had about 300 educators go through the Common Formative Assessment 2.0 workshop. And out of 300 educators, I would say 290 of them gave us feedback that that development has equipped them with better strategies to assess their learners. Our next level is going to be, where has that transfer occurred? So we're glad that we have the feedback and the voice from our staff, and now we'd like to see, is it transferring, or how is it transferring for the growth and achievement of our kids? And then something that has really helped us really just get focused with our journey that we've been on with visible learning and with building a sound assessment structure is the Smart Learning System. And this has really helped us as a district, and then in turn our buildings, put together a very focused plan that allows for some very concise data analysis. Instead of looking at every single thing or every single data point, we identify where there are some greatest areas of need, some greatest areas of opportunity, and we put the spotlight on that. And so with those three different variables that have been a part of Valley View, it is without a doubt, hands down, supporting the green that you've been able to see on the data that we were sharing this evening.
Anything else?
No, we're happy to
I'd like
answer
to
any
add
questions.
one point. I'd like to commend the team for the significant work they've done over the years to get us to this place. When I first took on the role of superintendent, I indicated to all that there would be the storm before the quiet. I think we've weathered that storm, and we are now in a place where it's quiet for our district. When you just look out there, I think if I ask all of the employees to leave, we'd be empty. I dare say. In fact, I'm sure we would be, which speaks volumes to where we were and where we've come. One thing that we didn't talk about on the slide that is critical to our future success is the foundation of our pillars, which is beliefs. And we've spoken to that from the theoretical concept of invisible barriers. And those invisible barriers are really about what we as a district believe about our kids and the values we bring. And we want to make sure that we stay centered on our beliefs so that we're able to maximize our efforts that are in place as a result of our systems. And really everything that we do, we want to look at through the lens of how we as adults will act. And we do take into account all the variables that our children bring to us each day as it applies to their socioeconomic status, the language barriers, their race, their gender, their culture, and all those things. But from that lens, we look at those variables not from the perspective of an excuse for why our kids can't achieve and grow, but we look at that through the lens of what do we as adults have to do, what actions do we have to take to overcome those variables. So it's not just about the systems we put in place, but it's also about a constant eye on our beliefs and our values to ensure that we're in the right mind frame to continue our growth and achievement and success.
Thank you. And for those of us who were here when we started with the new view, and for those of you out there that were here when we started the new view, we knew this was a big stone to push up a hill. And I think we're at the hill. I think we're at the plateau. So once we get to that, it's a lot easier to push that rock, and then we'll find the next challenge and continue to move on. But you guys have been a part of this, integral part of watching all this happen. Member Campbell and I believe, Member Perro, were you were not here then? It was a slog, but the teachers, the educators, the building administrative folks, some are gone, some are still here. We threw something out there and we said, buy into it. And you did. And the community bought into it. We've done some things that people thought we were nuts when we went to all-day kindergarten in the middle of the worst economic downturn in the history of the country that anybody around could remember. But we added 24 classrooms because we knew that was going to be important. We hired new teachers. We did things that we need to do. We accelerated this one-on-one with the Chromebooks and what have you. I would suspect that the math will next year look better because of that, if nothing else. Just simply having the technology, kids can get instant feedback and figure out what they did wrong. And if they can't figure it out, there's programs that they can go to and instantly access answers, whether it's something within our programs or if they can go to Khan Academy and go backwards and figure out forensically where am I at, what do I need to do. Their parents can help them. All this stuff was an idea and a concept. Dr. Mitchell brought it forth. We sat in the gym at Romeoville High School, and he said, if you believe in me, if you will give me a chance, I think we can do this. And we all sat, all the board members and some others sat up on that stage, and we got a round of applause because I think the teachers wanted something different, and they believed in what they could do, and to entrust them, and then again, get the kids to buy in and the families to buy in. This is where we are now, and I think those numbers, everything, we're going to be above state averages next year. I just have that feeling. So that's the next challenge, I guess. But as I said, we knew it was a big stone to push up a hill. We're at the top of the hill. Now we're at a plateau. We'll roll forward and move to the next challenge. So thank you all for your efforts, and Jim, for your vision and belief in what we could and should do and where we are right now. So.
I also thank the teachers out there. They work very hard to get to where we've been.
Yep.
Okay? The other thing is, if we go back to slide 11 and we see what the middle school is doing, if I count right, I see 3 things for language arts and 1 for math. That concerns me just a little bit, okay? So we need to get as many things to help out that middle school math as we do the language arts, all right? Thank you.
Moving down the agenda, since we've already done the wonderful Trans-World System contract renewal, AFT report. Oh, I'm sorry, Legal Services report. No report. Thank you, John. Yes, he drove all the way here from Aurora just to say that. Association reports, AFT. Apparently no report. Valley View Council report. Apparently no report. Valley View Office Personnel Council report. No report. Any old business before the board this evening? Any new business before the board this evening? Any questions from the public on actions we have taken this evening? Hearing none, seeing none, moving down the agenda. Any announcements by the board members? From my right? From my left?
Yep.
We have one from the left.
H2O, Heart Haven Outreach, their 5K is on October 15th. And for those of you who don't know exactly how that works now, you raise money, you run the race, and you can raise money for a charity of your choice. So some may choose to donate their money to H2O or to American Cancer Society, some teams or individuals, or people can do like Woodview did last year. They formed a team, and their charity of choice was their school, and they raised funds to help purchase the Makerspace program for their school. So schools, think about it. The registration deadline is coming up soon. You can go to the hearthavenoutreach.org website for the application for the 5K. And I think you have to register your charity of choice prior to the event. And it's a good way to make some money for your school. So please, administrators, pass the word along to your staff.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Any announcements by the administration? Push the button.
I have one. I received a letter from the Illinois Association of School Boards to Superintendent Dr. James Mitchum. The subject is your board members' IASB Professional Development Award. I'd like to congratulate the following board member for her achievement as an award for the leadership and/or master board member program of the Illinois Association of School Boards, IASB. Liz Campbell, MBM, master board member, maintained. This achievement models lifelong learning. For further information on the IASB recognition program, you can go to their website. This award was presented at the upcoming Three Rivers Division dinner meeting. District superintendents or the recording secretary can register an individual or group by logging on to IASB.com. You can go to the count and manage there. Click on the events calendar and then click on the Three Rivers Division dinner meeting. We hope that the board members will be able to attend to honor Member Campbell as she receives this award from Catherine Larson. So thank you, Member Campbell.
And what is the date?
Good question.
Liz? October 3rd or 30th? 30th. Okay, thank you. Congratulations. Any announcements by the public? Just real quickly remind everybody about the security thing. Mr. Brown is in the back. Good luck on that. When does that start? Wednesday? Thursday? Good. Look forward to that. That's always a very successful deal. Barring no other discussions, a motion to adjourn would be in order.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Have a great evening. Thank you, and thank you for what you do.